Good day, sir. Good day, classmates. I am Ryan Suaso Jr. and welcome to Chapter 8, Grading Systems and the Grading System of the Department of Education. So, the learning outcomes in this chapter is to distinguish between norm reference grading system, cumulative and averaging grading system, and to compute grades of students in various grade levels observing DepEd guidelines. Overview. Grading in education is the process of applying standardized measurements of varying levels of achievement in a course. Grades can be assigned in letters, for example, A, B, B+, and so on and so forth, as a 7-point in the American system. 1, 1.2, 1.5, 1.7, and so on and so forth, or an 8-point system. And letters can be also replaced with numerical values in the Philippine colleges and universities. So yung sa grade format natin sa SDSSU is an 8-point system, 'di ba? O yung 1, 1.2, 1.5. So ganyan. But in basic education, grades are expressed as percentages of accomplishment, such as 80% or 75%. As a number out of possible total, for example, out of 20 or 100, or as descriptors, which is excellent ba? A norm reference grading system, as the word says, it is norm, meaning it's the standard of the group. So the basis of scoring is the group standard, which means that the score of one student or one person depends on what the whole group or class will be able to get. So the standard of grading system is the group norm, meaning nakadepend sa group yung magiging score or grades mo. Okay, so norm reference grading system, example, percentile rank formula. So we have L mn over 100, where L is the percentile, m is the score, and n is the number of observation. We can also have standard 9 are some example of norm reference grading system, or the mean formula, which is the summation of x over n. Example, consider the following two sets of scores in an English 1 class for two sections of 10 students each. So yung section A at section B, may 10 students sila. Then yung, shall we say na in a 100 items test, 100 item test, ito yung mga score ng 10 students. Student in A class got a raw score of 75 and would get a grade of 80%. So because we use the percentile formula, so yung percentile or yung raw score niya is 75 multiplied by 10 over 100. So yung result is 7.5 or 8. So 80%. And student in B class got a raw score of 90 and would get a grade of 80%. Because yung percentile is 90, then multiplied by 10 and divided by 100, so 8.5, so 80%. As you notice, Sa student A, 75 yung raw score, 80%. Then sa student B, 90 yung raw score niya, then 80% din yung grades niya. So, makikita natin yung gap or yung differences ng dalawang row score, 75 and 90. So, mas malaki yung sa student B, but the same pa rin yung grading, yung grades na nakuha nila, which is 80%. Kasi, yung sa student, pareho silang hindi highest score yung nakuha nila. So, yung high score kasi sa section B is 100, and yung high score din sa student A is 85. So, parang third to the last sila. Third to the last yung rank nila. So, pareho silang 80% yung nakuha nilang grades. Sa norm reference grading system, if you got the highest score, automatically you are the top student or you are the highest. Because norm reference also is used to describe relative replacement of scores, such as kung ano ba yung rank mo, first ka ba, second, third, and etc. So this will also answer the question, what is your rank after all the scores are arranged from highest to lowest. So kung i-arrange, katulad nito, in-arrange yung sa from lowest to highest. So you got a 80%. So third place siya dito. So your performance is always relative to the group, even if you are the highest or the lowest, not as high or low. So your score is compared to other students who take the same test, or result is interpreted by comparing one student with another student who take the same test. In norm reference grading, the students, while they may work individually, are actually in competition to achieve a standard of performance that will classify them into the desired grade range. Example, a teacher may establish a grading policy whereby the top 15% of students will receive a mark of excellent or outstanding. So, dito may in-establish ng teacher na grading policy. So, yung top 15% of the class will automatically get a grade of 1.0 or excellent. So yung next 15% is good na lang yung makukuha nila. Then the next 45%, so average grade 2.0. Then the next 15 is poor, which is 3.0, and the bottom 10% of the class is 5.0 or fail. A serious problem with the norm reference grading is that no matter what the class level of knowledge and ability, and no matter how much they learn, a predictable proportion of students will receive each grade. Since its essential purpose to sort students into categories based on relative performance, norm reference grading and evaluation is often used to whip out students for limited places in selective educational programs. So that's it.
Good day, everyone. I'm the reporter for 8.2 and also 8.3. But first, Of course, let's start for 8.2, the criterion reference grading. A criterion reference grading is a grading system that based on a fixed criterion measure. I know we are very familiar of criterias, right? We already encountered it a lot in any situation. And it is a fixed target which the students must achieve the target in order to obtain the passing grade, regardless of how the students and the class perform. The scale does not change regardless of the quality or lack thereof of the students. So here is an example of criterion reference grading. Imagine in a class of 100 students, no one might get a grade of excellent if no one scores 98 above or 85 above depending on the criterion used. Example 1.0 is excellence, equals to 98 to 100 or 85 to 100, while 1.5 is good, 88 to 97 or 80 to 84. 2.0 is fair, 75 to 87 or 70 to 79. 3.0 is poor or pass, 65 to 74 or 60 to 69. While 5.0 is failure, or below 85 or below 60. So this is just an example of criterion reference grading. A criterion reference grading system is often used in situations where the teachers are agreed in the meaning of a standard of performance in a subject. Of course, if you are going to have an activity and you need to set a criteria for standards basis, right? And those criteria are agreed by the teachers. Second, students are free to collaborate with one another and with structure, for the reason that criterion reference system does not require the mean of the class as a basis to distributing grades among the students. So in criterion reference grading, one students you are free to collaborate or help your other classmates at his or her work, because in criterion's reference grading, it does not affect at all if you're going to help one another of your students in this kind of activity, because your grading is based on your performance alone, which others' performance do not affect your grades. It is based on your performance and the criteria sets by the teachers. In the last one, with criterion reference grading, students are encouraged for helping one another and contributing to class and small group discussions, resulting in a rich learning environment. Like as I said, in a criterion grading system, you are free to collaborate one another, and it's a good way in a set of classroom. You are going to enrich the environment into learning fun, and you can be able to collaborate and contribute your knowledge to the class or group discussions. Further, since the criterion measure used in criterion reference grading is a measure that ultimately rests with the teacher, it is logical to ask what prevents teachers who use criterion reference grading from setting the performance criteria so low that everyone can pass with case. Of course, it is normal for us to react why the teacher sets so high standards that impossibly can be passed by all students, right? But of course, there are variety of measures used to prevent this situation from ever happening in the grading system. These are the two reasons why. First, the criterion should not be based only on one teacher's opinion or standards. It should be collaboratively arrived at. Or we can say that a teachers must be have, or there are three teachers, example, there are three teachers in one subject. Of course, it is not valid that only one teacher will agree with the criterion. It should be opinions from them to arrive such a criteria to be set. And second, once the criterion is established, it must be made public and open to public scrutiny so that it does not become arbitrary and subject to the whim and caprices by the teacher. Of course, if the criterion is already set, they will going to public it so that everyone can notice, or everyone will be known about the criteria, so that no one can freak out why I didn't pass, why, to avoid such ambiguity or questions why and what happened. That's why after the criterion is being done, it should be public and everyone must know it, so that they will aware what to do and why the results are this. Now we're done with 8.1, which the criterion reference grading system. Now we are going to tackle the 8.2. And this is just a short one. It's just a introduction for the report of 8.3, which will be reported by Miss Aina, if I am not mistaken. So the 8.2 is about the 4 questions in grading system. This is came up with Miss Marinella D. Snivicki 2007 of the Center for Teaching Effectiveness of the University of Texas. She had 4 interviewing questions about the grading system. Number 1, should grades reflect absolute achievements level or achievements relative to other in the same class? Number 2, should grades reflect achievements only or non-academic components such as attitude, speed, and diligence? Number 3, should grades report status achieved or amount of growth? Number 4, how can several grades on diverse skills combine to give a single mark? So as I said, this can be further be explained by the next reporter after I give my reports. And I think it's Miss Aina who will give the next reporter after me. Before I end my report, I just want to share an important note. And in the chapter 8, there are 2 kinds of reference grading system, which the first one is already reported by Sir Ryan, the norm reference grading, while I report the criterion reference grading. I just want to share a short difference between the 2 so that it avoids ambiguity. So norm reference grading is the result interpreted by comparing one students with another students who take the same test, or the quality of achievement is determined by the distance of the score from the mean or average. It is your test versus the test taken by the other students who test the same activity, same by yours. And the criterion reference grading is your score versus the set criteria, or the achievements of an individual is being compared by the set criteria, or the set criteria set by the teachers, right? In short, norm reference grading, it's your score versus the score by the other students. And criterion reference grading, your score versus the set criteria.
Good day, my name is Aina Sultan. My topic is, what should go into a student grade? The grading system an instructor select reflect is her educational philosophy. There are no right or wrong system, only systems which accomplish different objectives. The following are questions which an instructor may want to answer when choosing that will go into a student grade. Number 1 is, should grades reflect absolute achievement level or achievement relative to others in the same class. These are often referred to as the controversy between norm reference versus criterion reference grading. In norm reference grading system, the later grade a student receives is based on his or her standing in a class. A certain percentage of those at the top receive as a specific percentage of the highest grade receive BS, and so on. On the other hand, under such a system, an outside evaluator has little additional information about what a student actually knows, since that will vary with the class. A student who has learned a average amount in a class of geniuses will probably know more than a student who is average in a class of low ability. The system also assumes sufficient variability among student performances that the difference in learning between them justifies giving different grades. Second problem is that criterion-referred grading does not provide selection information. There is no way to tell from the grading who the best student or only the certain student have achieved certain levels. Whether one views this as a positive or negative will depend on one's individual philosophy. An advantage of this system is that the criteria of various grades are known from the beginning. This allows the student to take some responsibility for the level at which he or she is going to perform. A positive aspect of this for acknowledge that much of uncertainty which often accompanies grading for students is eliminated, since they can plot their own progress towards the desired grade. The students have little uncertainty about where they stand. Number 2 is, should grades reflect achievement only or non-academic components such as attitude, speed, and diligence? It is very common practice to incorporate such things as turning in assignment on time into the overall grade in a course, and primarily because the need to motivate students to get their work done is a real problem for instructors. Also, it may be appropriate to the selection function of grading that such values as timeliness and diligence be reflected into the grades. External users of the grades may be interpreting the mark for including such factors as attitude and compliance in addition to competence in the material. There are two steps instructors should take are: number 1 is to make students aware of this possibility will in advance of graded assignment, and number 2 is to make clear what behavior is included in such qualities as prompt completion of work and neatness or completeness. Number 3 is, should grades report status achieved or amount of growth? This is a particularly difficult question to answer. In many beginning classes, the background of the student is varied that some students can achieve the end and objective with little or no trouble, while others with weak backgrounds will work twice as hard and still achieve only half as much. This dilemma results from the same problem as the previous questions, that is, the feeling that we should be rewarding or punishing effort or attitude as well as knowledge gain. A positive aspect of this for knowledge is that much of the uncertainty which often accompanies grading for students is eliminated, since they can plot for their own progress toward the desired grade. The students have little uncertainty about where they stand. There are many problems with the growth measures as basis for change, most of them being related to statistical artifact. In some cases, the ability to accurate measure in turning an existing level is shaky enough to argue against change as a basis for grading. The last number is how can several grades on diverse skills combine to give a single mark? The basic answer is that they can't really. The result of instruction are so varied that the single mark is really a Rube Goldberg. As far as indicating what student has achieved, it would be most desirable to be able to give multiple marks. One for each of the variety of skills which are learned. There are, of course, many problems with such a proposal. It would complicate an already complicated task. There might not be enough evidence to reliably grade any one skill. The halo effect of good performance in one art could spill over into others. And finally, most outsiders are looking for only one overall classification of each person that they can choose the best. Our system requires that we produce one mark. Therefore, it is worth our life to see how that can be done even though currently the system does not lend itself to any satisfactory answers. This is my last topic is standardized test scoring. Test standardization is process by which teacher or researcher made tests are validated and item analyzed. After a true process of validation, the test characteristics are established. These characteristics include test validity, test reliability, test difficulty level, and other characteristics as previously discussed. Each standardized test uses its own mathematical scoring system derived by the publisher and administrators. And these do not bear any relationship to academic grading system. Standardized tests are psychometric instruments whose scoring system are developed by norming the test using national samples of test ticks centering the scoring. The formula to assure the likely score distributions describe a normal curve when graph, and then using the resulting scoring system uniformly in manners resembling a criterion reference approach. If you are interested in understanding and interpreting the scoring system of specific standardized tests, refer to the policies of the test producers.
So the next topic is all about the two types of the grading system. What are the two types of grading system? So the two types of grading system are the cumulative and the averaging system of grading. But first we have to discuss what is the averaging system. So in averaging system, the grade of a student in a particular grading period is equal to the average of the grade obtained in the prior grading periods and the current grading period. So in averaging system, the grades of the student from prelim, midterm, and in final will be added together, and it will be divided into 3, and the result will be considered as the final grade of the student. So for example, the student's grades are 80 in prelim, 90 in midterm, and 85 in the final. So it will be added together like 80 plus 90 plus 85, and that equals to 85. So that means that the final grade of the student is 85. Second, we have the cumulative grading system. So in cumulative grading system, the grade of a student in the grading period is equal to his current grading period grade, which is assumed to have cumulative effect of the previous grading period. So in cumulative grading system, the previous grade of the student will be used in making the next grade of the student. So for example, the student's grades are 80 in prelim, 90 in midterm, and 80 as tentative final grade. So in finding the final grade, 1/3 of the midterm grade will be added by the 2/3 of the tentative final grade, and that is 1/3 of 90 and 2/3 of 80, and that is equal to 30 plus 53.33, and that equals to 83. So that means the final grade of the student is 83. So there are policy guidelines in classroom assessment for the K-12 basic education DepEd Order number 8. The student's grade is a function of 3 components. So there are 3 components which are the basis in making the student's grades. First, we have the written works. In written work, that includes the quizzes and the assignments. Second, we have the performance task, and that is how the student applies the lessons that they have learned from their teacher's discussion. And third, we have the quarterly assessment, that includes the exams. So let me show to you a table that represents the weights of the components in the different subjects. In languages, AP and ASP subject, the written works is equivalent to 30%, the performance task has 50%, and the quarterly assessment has 20%. In science and math subject, the written works is equivalent to 40%, and the performance task has 40%, and the quarterly assessment has 20%. In MAPI, EPP, and TLE subjects, the written works has equivalent of 20%, the performance task has 60%, and the quarterly assessment has 20%. If you have observed in the table, the subjects are divided into 3 groups. So the first column, those are the core subjects. The second column, those are the subjects that is under the academic tracks. And the third column, those are the subjects that is more on performances and exhibit. So if you have observed among the components, the performance task has the highest percentage contribution to the grade of the students. And this means that the Department of Education grading system consistently puts most emphasis on the application of learned concepts and skills. And by that, the students are more encouraged to apply what they have learned from the discussions from the lessons, because our performance will have a great impact in developing a higher grade, which most of us aim to have. That's all. God bless and thank you.
Good day, everyone. My name is Zenidayan A. Sabado. So my topic is all about the steps in grade competition. Based on the same DepEd Order 8S 2015, here are the steps to the following in computing grades. So the first step is to get the total score of each components. The first thing you do is to get all the learner's row score and highest possible score of the components, which are the written work, performance task, and quarterly assessment. Then you total the row and highest possible score of all the components in the example. The second step you do is to divide the total row score by the highest possible score, then multiply the quotient by 100%. So the formula is percentage score, or PS, equals row score over the highest possible score times 100%. So here in our example, by solving the percentage score of written work, we got 90.63. For performance task, we got 83.83. Then at the quarterly assessment, we got 80. The third step is to convert the percentage score to weighted scores. Multiply the percentage score by the weight of the components indicated in the table, 4 and 5. So the formula for this is the weighted score or WS equals percentage score or PS times percentage in decimal form. So here in an example, by solving the weighted score of written work, we get 27.19, performance task 41.67, then quarterly assessment is 16. And now let's proceed to the fourth step. Add the weighted score of each component. The result will be the initial grade. As you can see in the example, the components of weighted score is being listed. So now let's add each WS of each component. Written work equals 27.19, performance task 41.67, quarterly assessment 16. So the total, which is the initial grade, is 84.86. After getting the initial grade, let's proceed to the last step, which is to transmute the initial grade using the transmutation table in Appendix B. The initial grade is 84.86, then the transmuted grade is 90. So the quarterly grade in English for the first quarter is 90. Then it is reflected in the report card. For MAPE, individual grades are given to each area, namely music, arts, physical education, and health. The quarterly grade for MAPE is the average of the quarterly grades in the 4 areas. So here is the formula to compute the quarterly grade for MAPE. Quarterly grade equals QG for music plus QG for arts plus QG for PE plus QG for health. So the sum for the quarterly grade of 4 areas is the quarterly grades for MAPE. So, the next topic is grade competition. What follows is the description of how grades computed based on DepEd Order 8S 2015. So, for kindergarten, there are no numerical grades in kindergarten. Description for the learner's progress in the various learnings are presented using checklist and student's portfolio. These are presented to the parents at the end of each quarter for discussion. Additional guidelines on the kindergarten program will be issued. For grade 10, the average of the quarterly grade produces the final grade. So the formula is final grade by learning area equals to the first quarter plus second quarter plus third quarter plus fourth quarter over 4. So the computation of the general average is general average equals sum of the final grades of all learning areas over total number of learning areas in grade level. The final grade in each learning area and the general average are reported as whole numbers. Table 8 shows an example of the final grades of the different learning areas and general average of grade 4 students. For the grade 11 and 12, the 2 quarter determines the final grade in a semester. Table 9 shows an example in grade 11 second semester for the accounting business and management or ABM strand. So the summary of learners' progress is shown quarterly to the parent and guardians through parent-teachers conference, in which report cards is discussed, remarks is given at the end of the grade level. So, Table 10 shows the example of descriptor grading scale and remarks.
Hi, my name is Tristan Nikki Santa.
So, in 8.11 table, promotion and retention at the end of the school year. So, a final grade of 75 or higher and 75 in all learning areas allows the student to be promoted to the next grade year level. And in table 13 it specifies that the guidelines to be followed for learners, promotion, and retention. So, there are requirements for you to be promoted to the next grade year level. So, for grades 1 to 3 learners and for grades 4 to 10 learners, they have the same requirements. So, the first requirement is that a final grade of at least 75 in all learning areas must be, because you will be promoted if you have the 75 grade in all learning areas. then you will be promoted to the next year grade level. And if did not, and the second one is that if did not meet expectation in not more than 2 learning areas, then you must pass the remedial classes for learning areas with failing marks and to be promoted to the next grade year level. Otherwise, you will be retained in the same grade level. And the third requirements is that if did not meet expectation in 3 or more than learning areas, then you will be retained in the same grade year level. So those are the requirements for you to be promoted to the next year grade level. Pass-fail system. So other colleges, universities, faculties, schools, and institutions use pass-fail systems for grading in the Philippines. So there are advantages in using pass-fail systems. So the advantage of a pass-fail grading system includes the fact that the students will perceive less pressure because they are not actively competing with their peers or worrying about letters and numbers. Instead, they can focus on comprehending and using the information they learn. And sometimes this can be a disadvantage because this lack of competitiveness can result in laziness and a habit that students will likely take with them in their future jobs. And if this is the case, then the pass-fail grading system would become a failure. Non-grade evaluation. So in non-grade evaluation, yet practice in Philippine schools and institutions, non-graded evaluation do not assign numeric or letter grades as a matter of policy. So this practice is usually based on behalf that the grades introduce an inappropriate or distracting element of competition and learning process. So there are some advantage of the non-graded schools, like students may avoid the damaging effects or failures and reputation, and student learning becomes the primary focus as compared to the number of years a student spends in school. And a sense of success also, confidence and self-reliance enhances positive development of the students, like self-concept. So, or that they are not as meaningful as measures and intellectual growth and development as are carefully crafted faculty evaluation. So those are the meaning and advantage of non-grade evaluations. So the process of deciding on a grading system is very complex one. The problems faced by teacher who tries to design a system which will be accurate and fair are common to any manager attempting to evaluate those for whom he or she is responsible. While choosing a grading system is bluntly a difficult procedure that any manager attempting to evaluate individuals for whom he or she is responsible will confront the same difficulties as teacher attempting to establish an accurate, fair approach. And that while the problems of teachers and students with regard to grading are almost identical to those administrators and faculty with regard to evaluation for promotion and tenures. Well, yes, teachers and students face grading issues that are nearly identical to those faced by administrators and professors when evaluating for promotion and tenures.